This is my presentation on legality and educational technology, assignment number 5. And my thinking throughout the project was to look at both acceptable use policies as well as the issue of privacy in the schools. Um, Acceptable use policies was something that interested me because I had to work to create one last year for my school, which we'll see parts of in the presentation. And I felt that these were important parts of dealing with many different aspects of the legality in issues. So here is my presentation. So we have better safe than sorry. And I wanted to define AUPs. It's setting up clear expectations and standards of practice for both students and staff to use. But why use acceptable use policies? Well, there are 3 things that I accounted for. Student safety being one, that there are many harmful websites and that these chat rooms and online forums can present strangers the opportunities to garner information for students. So student safety is one. Copyright issues, which is another legal issue, comes in the form of that there is lots of information, so it's very easy to plagiarize whether they know it or not. So it's really our work as technology directors to make sure that they understand how they need to attribute their how to make attribution properly and what is legal and ethical. And then to focus on accountability as well, not only accountability of the staff to the students and the students to the staff, but also for all of these E-rate schools, which are important for the Children's Internet Privacy Act, or CIPA, to receive funding. So this is an important procedure to have in place in order to be compliant. And then I said what makes a good acceptable use policy. From our reading, I looked at these 5 components. Number 1, computing facilities will be used exclusively for educational purposes. And then here I go into examples from my school's AUP. And it says, that it will be used only for educational and administrative purposes. It's to promote educational excellence, and so on and so forth. And then we also have something called the student-generated material policy, which means that anything that students post online in reference to classes will be for educational uses only. Number 2, students and teachers use educationally appropriate speech and expression when using technological tools. Again, with the AUP, we have these prohibitions, number 9 being using inappropriate language, pictures, stating what they can't do, which is often easier to say than what they're allowed to do. And then we also have in their student-generated material policy, acceptable students will provide constructive comments and feedback on peer work. So this is stating that this is professional, this is constructive criticism, and not that it is just saying, oh, I hate your work or I really like your work, but actually helping them learn and helping their peers learn as well. Number 3, users' responsibilities to avoid copyright violations. Again, this is one of the prohibitions. Do not violate copyright law. And it's further explained as acceptable postings will avoid plagiarism by citing sources of information or media. So, and then we learn how to do that throughout the year. Number 4, for privacy, that we ensure the privacy of the students. So one thing is for staff especially, not to violate students' rights to privacy and confidentiality. And we do this in the generated material policy in 2 ways. We say that the student shouldn't post information about themselves or their peers, that's private. And then we go into more detail about how we use social media and making usernames and passwords that we only use, information that is not as private, such as first names and the birth dates, but not the years. Nothing that would give away, age or their telephone number or any information that could be tracked back to them. And the last one, that it wouldn't be any disruption to the educational process. And again, I look at the AUP and it says, we don't want them to be using chat rooms, instant messaging, peer-to-peer file sharing software, nothing that would distract from their learning, unless, of course, it was with the direct example from, or that they wouldn't want to be doing this unless the teacher was saying this in a guided activity. And then some further considerations, focusing on age appropriateness, making sure that what they're reading, they're understanding, because they're the ones that need to know this, and this needs to be understood by the students. So that I got from that discussion board about different acceptable use policies. I saw that and thought that was wise advice. And also making sure that this is an agreement that they sign and read and understand what is going on so that they can follow it and be held accountable if they're not following it. And some more resources. These are more examples of acceptable use policies that someone looking at this or referring back to this after I present it to staff or administration can look for more examples. And then I go out to privacy, which is the second issue that I looked at. The privacy, I liked this quote from the article that you gave us to read, that it's lots of possibilities, but then there's also potential problems, and personal privacy being fundamental to those. So I took the information about FERPA and looking at how we would look at student privacy, and then I look secondly at faculty and staff privacy. So with FERPA, they said the 4 points that you needed to focus on were number 1, distributing information and making sure that that privacy is met. Not to disclose confidential information via electronic communications or email. That when students themselves disclose information, that we need to make sure that the privacy is being followed. And school corporate partnerships. So this is like third parties using your information, that we keep all private information of students private. And then for faculty and staff, looking at the considerations for faculty and staff, we know that this has to kind of have to be on a case-by-case basis. So pointing out this quote from the article saying that, it could be discoverable under public records law, so we need to focus that they really shouldn't have an expectations of privacy, which brought up the point of email, which usually tends to be pretty private, but this great article from Scholastic I liked because it said, we should really make sure that we are looking at email provided by the school district as public, and make sure that that is all subject to the same monitoring that we have. So all in all, this was my presentation, and I hope it will garner a good grade. Thank you very much.